What's this class warfare business the Democrats are hoisting on the country? What is this? We didn't see that during your administration.
Well, you know, I don't look at it as class warfare. I think if you look at what's happened over the last 30 years, the middle class has lost ground. And in the last decade, the middle class incomes are basically, even before the recession, the collapse, before the financial collapse, median income was $2,000 a year lower than it was after inflation when I left office. So I don't mind paying more taxes, but because I think I got the benefit of the tax cuts under President Bush and the benefit of being in the top 1%, so my income went up. But that won't solve the problem. That'll help us balance the budget when there's growth again. But we have to change the whole job structure of America. We've got to basically reorient our economy toward the future. That's the real answer.
But that's not being discussed. What's being discussed by the Occupy Wall Street people and by some elements on the far left is the one percenters. Me and you, we're not paying our fair share. I think I am paying my fair share. Now, I didn't mind paying what you had me at. Yeah. I didn't mind paying you that. But, you know, I found something interesting researching today. Do you know among you, Obama, and Bush, who had the highest tax receipts of all three of you? Do you know? Bush. The Bush tax cuts generated more money to the federal government, $2.6 billion. Your high was $2 billion, and Obama's high has been $2 billion. So under prosperity, the tax cuts under Bush, more money flowed into the federal government. So I think it's all a ruse, this tax to rich stuff.
But, well, that's not quite true. There wasn't more prosperity under him than me. Unemployment rate
I'm not
was low,
saying
there were
that,
more
though.
jobs.
I'm saying when the prosperity of the country goes up, so do the tax receipts.
Exactly.
All right? So Erskine Bowles comes back and says, let's cut the corporate tax from 35 to 26. What does Obama say? What does the president say? No.
But if you look at what the Bowles-Simpson Commission recommended, I think there are a lot of great things in that report.
Then why didn't the president take them?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I think that what should be done, what Bowles-Simpson did is what I think should be done, some variation of it. They said, this long-term debt's going to kill us. We have to deal with it. But nobody gets out of a big annual deficit or a growing debt without economic growth. So when the whole world is flat of its back and interest rates are virtually zero and there's no demand for capital, you can't balance the budget, because if you cut spending in those environments, or if you raise taxes too much in those environments, basically your revenues will go down.
Yeah, you make it worse.
More than worse. So what Bowles-Simpson says is, let's adopt some short-term strategies to get growth going. Then let's have a long-term debt reduction package. That's what I think we should do. And I think it'll work. I personally, I read every word of the Bowles-Simpson report, and I thought it was quite good.
But I was surprised that the president didn't embrace it, because it gave him a pathway out of the mess, and that's where we are right now. Now, one more question about the class warfare. Are you really convinced the Democrats aren't playing this card? Because that's all we hear is tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. I don't mind paying 40%, and that was the high under you, all right? And Bush cut it back down to 34%. I don't mind going back to the 40. But I don't want $500 billion going to Solyndra, and it's bankrupt. Am I crazy?
No, but I think, let's look overall. I think the idea of moving to a cleaner energy future and doing more energy efficiency,
love it,
makes smart sense. And what happened to Solyndra was a unique case. They were trying to move out of photovoltaic cells into a more efficient cylinder, and they could do it. But what happened is, with the Chinese producing more and subsidizing more, and with Americans in the business doing more, the price of the traditional photovoltaic cells dropped so much that it became an uneconomical thing. I personally prefer, in those kinds of cases, not loan guarantees, but tax credits for people that actually produce it. Because then, if you and I have a different technology, we're on even footing.
Right. But $500 billion down the drain, I mean, it's crazy. Okay, now, let's go to one of the things you say.
It's $500 million, right?
No, $500 billion. I think it was 500 billion. No, you're right. It was 500 million. I misspoke. 500
That's still
million.
a lot of money, but
Yeah, it's not on that level. Okay. In your book, you say the key to getting the economy started is to get the banks to start lending money. Well, how are you going to do that? You can't force the banks to lend money.
no. Well, first, I say there's two big pots of money that don't run up the deficit:
Bank?
banks and corporate treasuries. Corporations headquartered in America have about $1.7 trillion uncommitted to investment overseas, which I think they'd bring home if we did lower the corporate tax rate, as the Simpson-Bowles Commission recommends. And what they recommended was, let's lower the rate and broaden the base and let everybody pay something, but have a competitive rate. And I think that's a good idea. I think we could do that. And I recommended in this book that we essentially let corporations repatriate their money with no tax if they hire more people with it. And if they pay the capital gains rate, they can do whatever they want to, and then we should take that money and seed an infrastructure bank and then take private capital. Do like other countries. Most other countries let private investors and from all over the world invest in their infrastructure and just use their government funds as the base to attract their private capital.
Right.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So you could do that. Now, on the housing, here's the problem. Most banks actually don't own a lot of housing debt, mortgage debt. They just service the mortgages and they sell off the mortgages.
And that's what got us into the mess.
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac,
Right.
the VA, FHA. But it's still freezing everything. And look, there's a more liberal way to do this, a more conservative way to do it, but the main thing to do it is to do it fast. We need to move through the housing debt more quickly. And what I favor is to turn this merger of the banks into where they can do commercial and investment operations. I think we should turn it on their head so that in other words, let a commercial bank with a lot of mortgage debt, in return for writing the debt down or lengthening the terms at a lower interest rate so that they don't get killed, let them convert what they give up today into an equity investment in the house so that when housing prices go up again and the house is sold, they get to split the profits. But they clean up their books now. They don't have bad debt on the books. It's not overhanging. Then they've got plenty of money to loan. They've got almost $2 trillion in cash, uncommitted to loans. But it's hard when you don't know what's going to happen to your mortgage
That's right.
situation.
Everybody's scared, and President Obama's leadership has not engendered confidence, and that's why he's not polling well. All right, I want to do some fast...
Wait. Let me say one thing about that. It is a complicated thing, but one of the problems we've got is that historically, the legal resolution of this business has been at the state level. You see, they tried to get all the attorneys general together. Then New York says, I want a different deal.
Yeah,
Massachusetts, sure. California. I think what we need, if you look at that Citibank settlement, for example, Bank of America settlement, they said, okay, we'll give $8.5 billion to the people who bought these home mortgage securities. Now we're clear. Now let's put a master who's an expert in this and put all the mortgages in there and let them dispose of it. We need to run through this thing in a hurry. And if you look at what happened to Japan in the 90s, if you go back a couple of hundred years, these things take 5 or 10 years to get over unless you move through the debt in a hurry. That's what we need to do.
Okay. Now, you basically mentioned the attorneys general each lobbying for their own state. 28 attorneys general don't want Obamacare, suing the federal government. 28 out of 50. All right? I want you to make a prediction. Supreme Court going to overturn that?
I doubt it. I hope not.
Well, I know you hope not. You're a nice Democrat, you're a loyal guy, but the individual mandate, very troubling in the Constitution. Wouldn't you say that is the big hinge?
No, I disagree. I think that it's not any different from requiring people on motorcycles to wear helmets.
Public safety. There's a public safety on the helmets and the motorcycles, as there is with the driver's license.
Public safety, it is if you insist on riding a motorcycle without a helmet and you have a wreck and you don't have insurance, then you're saying, I have a right to be supported for the rest of my life by everybody else.
Well, if you're going to take that as the criteria, then you can say you can't eat Big Macs because you're going to go to the hospital if you eat them every day and it's going to cost the taxpayer. I don't think the federal government, just a gentleman's disagreement. So you say Supreme Court not going to overturn. I say they will overturn.
You may be right. I think that they certainly would like to. They'd like to throw a ringer in the pie.
Yeah, they want the states to handle
based
this.
on the Citizens United thing. But if you look at, here's the way I look at it an entirely different way. Let's look at it just pure economics. The people who are defending the status quo are defending a system that is the only system in the world that charges 17.5% to insure of income every year to insure 84% of the people. No one else, no other rich country in the world spends more than 12% of income to insure 100% of the people. And we don't get better health outcomes. And we're spotting our competitors a minimum of $850 billion a year. It's terrible economics.
But you know the solution to that
system.
You know the solution to that. Let the insurance companies compete statewide. Let everybody get in the game and drive the price down.
Let your insurance companies compete across state lines.
That's right.
In other words, create a national market for insurance. While you're saying we should create a state by state choice.
Let the states regulate. Let them regulate what happens there, but let everybody compete. And again, your party doesn't want that. They want.
I do.
They want that.
That's one place where I agree with the Republicans.
I think you're going to have to defect here, Mr. Clinton. That's what I'm hearing here.
No.
I think you might have to defect.
I'm for the individual mandate.
You should.
That's the conservative position, the individual mandate. But I do believe that insurance companies should be able to compete. Right now, we spend $200 billion a year in healthcare administrative costs on private insurance, more than we would spend if we had any other country system, including the Netherlands, where there's an individual mandate and all the insurance is private, and they just subsidize lower income people.
There's 8 million people in the Netherlands. Come on. You can do that easy in those kind of countries. You can't do it with 320 million people.
Sure you could.
No, you can't. It's going to break the bank.
Economics are just the same.
Look, the businesses, you know it, they're going crazy. They don't want this. Nobody wants it in the business community.
Well, nobody wants what they've been told about it, and we've taken long enough to get through it. But I think
it's not
there's no reason we couldn't have the idea that we have to spend 50% more than any other country on health care is nuts.
I'm agreeing with you. Let it go into the free marketplace. You'll drive it down. Now, I got to give you a hard time on the border. You ready for a hard time on the border? All right, you took office 93. About 4.5 million people were coming across the border. You left office, 7 million people a year coming across the border. Why couldn't you secure it?
Because the economy got better. It's a long border.
Well, I know.
We had a fence, in San Diego.
And it worked.
It worked pretty well.
Well, why didn't you put it down in Brownsville all the way through?
Because, for one thing, back then, even the Texas Republicans didn't want it.
But you could have done it by executive order. Who cares what they want?
I don't know if I could have or not, but nobody was upset about it then. People were moving back and forth across the Rio Grande.
I was upset.
I know you were, but I think it's a mistake. I think it was a mistake to send this 19-year-old Bangladeshi college student from New York who came here when she was 2 months old back home. I think it was a mistake to send that Mexican woman from Washington State back home and leave her kids here.
I don't want anything to do with any of that brutality, but I do think the federal government has let us down since 1984 in the sense they have not secured the southern border, and they could have, and they didn't.
Well, I think, if you really think we ought to build a whole fence, that's about the only way to secure it.
And I do. And a lot of people agree, but some don't. Now, the narcotics traffic is also...
before we get
narcotics is another component of this, not just people.
Yeah, but that I agree with. We should do more. But most of that could be controlled. Most of that is not brought over on people's backs. Most of that comes over on the roads, and we could control it.
That's right.
Or in planes. And we did a lot better on that when I was in office. But let me just say one thing about the immigrant deal. I know that this is a hot issue because the economy's down. But one of America's great strengths going forward, because of immigrants, not because of the birth rate among basically European Americans.
We got to get the best and brightest in here. Absolutely.
We already, though, have a younger workforce on average than Europe and Japan. And in 20 years, if the Chinese don't change their one-child policy or let immigrants in, we'll have a younger workforce than China. That means America will be in great shape if we get out of this mess we're in for the next 30 to 40 years.
But it has to be done fair. It has to be done orderly.
I agree with that.
Him. Okay. Guantanamo Bay, you close it?
I think it can be closed. But
would you close it if you were president?
I'm not sure that I know enough to know that.
Come on, you've been there.
But I would. I don't believe I'd ever opened it in the first place, but I'd like to see it closed.
Really? You wouldn't have opened it in the first place? Where are you going to put all these captured terrorists overseas? Where would you have put them?
Well, I think there are places they could be kept in America.
But then as soon as they go on American soil, they have the rights of the American people under the Constitution. And these are
That's not necessarily true. I have a big difference of opinion about what the law should be. I might have tried to change the law on that.
Why keep them here in America when you have the lease space in Guantanamo, not inconveniencing Americans?
I believe they've improved the conditions at Guantanamo and gotten rid of all the legal objections to it. So I doubt if it can be closed now, and it may be the only practical alternative.
Okay, so you don't feel that strongly about it. Education spending is a big Democratic tenet. Spend more, spend more, spend more. We spend in the United States more than any other country but Switzerland. Again, a tiny country. Our test scores are going down. It's not about money. It's about parenting, and it's about discipline in the schools, in my opinion. Am I wrong?
It's about those two things, but not just those two things. There is a reason that, let's say, these KIPP schools, the charter schools, do so well in low-income area. It's also about having a culture of learning in the schools, homework, discipline,
right,
and hammering home the belief that every kid can learn and every kid will learn, and holding yourself to high standards. There's a lot of evidence that we actually know what works in the schools, and one of the reasons I was always for charter schools and public school choice is that if you have a monopoly on customers and revenues, the good ideas don't necessarily travel fast. I remember when I first moved to Harlem, I went to the Frederick Douglass Academy, which is a public school choice school. And they had, 98% high school graduation rate. They scored above the state average on the New York Regents exam because they had a definable culture. The kids learned to be entrepreneurs. They operated a little store within the school that sold the school uniforms, and they could even sell things to their parents if they were eligible for the school lunch program. I think that the most important thing is to take what we know and basically make sure it's being implemented everywhere. And I also believe that if you look at the spending trends in all over America, relatively speaking, we're spending a relatively smaller percentage of the school dollar on teacher pay and a relatively greater percentage of the school dollar on other things than we were 30 years ago. And I think we need to look at how we can change some of those spending trends.
But I think the spending is fine. I think the culture, as you put it, isn't fine, and that's why we're having trouble.
But the allocation, you may be spending enough money, but there may be other ways to allocate it.
It's a state thing. Okay, now, President Obama, his chances to be reelected are, I'd say, 50-50 at this point. Would that be fair?
I think they're a little better than that.
Why would you think that when most of the polls show his approval's low 40s and most people, 60%, feel the country's headed in the wrong direction?
Because his approval's up in the last few weeks and because of this payroll tax cut where he's for it and it looks like the House may not be. And
yeah, but that's transient.
Their approval rate is down to 11%.
All right.
I think, and let me also say, because I think he's out there running against himself now. As soon as he gets an opponent, it'll be for the next 4 years, who do you think's more likely to take us in the right direction?
No, but it's going to be, I think it's going to be a referendum on President Obama anyway, no matter who it is. You work with Newt Gingrich. You respect him?
I respect his ability to think and do, and I eventually hammered out a really productive relationship with him.
You respect him as a man?
I don't disrespect anybody who works with me in good faith. I think he was way more political than I would have been. He's defended what he called scorched earth politics, and I certainly was the beneficiary of it. But I think that...
Did he use unfair tactics on you?
It depends on, not in his mind.
In your mind?
I don't think about it like that. I either liked it or I didn't.
Was he an enemy of yours while you were in the White House?
Until he got to be Speaker and until the government shutdown changed the public
and then you
mood.
Found détente?
Yeah, we worked together for 5 years.
Would you vote for him?
No, I'm going to vote for Obama.
Why wouldn't you vote for, just take the president out of the equation, again, a good Democrat, why wouldn't you vote for Newt Gingrich? Why would you not cast a ballot for him?
I can't take that out of the equation. I believe in a whole different direction in energy policy. I think the president's done a good job in foreign policy, and I think that we've got a better economic strategy now going than the one he's likely to implement. I thought the best thing he said in the campaign, though, Gingrich, was what he said 2 debates ago in the foreign policy debate about how this immigration issue should be handled. But then the very next day he said he didn't like the Ninth Circuit decision, so he just wanted to get rid of the Ninth Circuit. And then he mentioned some other decision he didn't get his eye on to fire this federal judge. So
he's on this program tonight, Gingrich. He's coming up right behind you.
I bet he'll be very entertaining.
Well, we've challenged him on that.
But anyway, let me just say this. When we were working together, I enjoyed it. And I think he has a lot of knowledge, and I think he comes up with some quite creative ideas. But the primary, the purpose of a primary is to test everybody's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, the middle.
And everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. And this has actually got an interesting dynamic between Newt Gingrich and Governor Romney. And we'll see who can regroup and rebalance.
Absolutely. Now,
and
what about
what
Romney? What about Romney? You know him?
A little bit. I always, unlike you, I like the Massachusetts health care bill. And the Massachusetts system's more expensive than the rest of America, but it was before the health care bill passed. And inflation and health care costs in Massachusetts have been less than in the country as a whole since it passed. But I was particularly grateful to him because after President Bush took office, even though President Bush, was one of 49 governors signing a letter to me and to Congress asking that the AmeriCorps program, our national service program, be indefinitely extended and expanded, he was under a lot of pressure to get rid of it because it had been started under a Democrat. And Mitt Romney helped save the idea that young people should be able to serve in America as well as in the Peace Corps overseas, and in so doing, earn some college credit. And I respected that. That's really my only substantive contact with him.
Okay. If you had a vote between Romney and Gingrich, if you snuck up to New Hampshire because anybody can vote in that primary, you go for?
I am not going to get in that Republican primary. No way you can ask me any kind.
All right.
I also like Huntsman, and if I voted for him, I'd be in the 1%. But he arguably has the most consistently conservative economic record of anybody running.
Well, he did very well in Utah. There's no doubt about it. Now, when your wife is running against Barack Obama in New Hampshire, and this must bring back memories to you, the press favored Obama, correct?
Oh, I think yes.
All right. No doubt about it. I don't think there's any doubt that the American press favored Barack Obama over Hillary Clinton in the primaries. Now, is that going to happen again? Is the American press going to favor Barack Obama over the Republican candidate?
We'll just have to wait and see.
You know the answer is yes. Now my question is, why? Why does the American press favor the more liberal candidate?
Well, I think there was more to it than that last time. But
tell me what. They didn't like your wife because of what reason?
I'm not going there. She's the Secretary of State. Nothing I say can be helpful on this.
But you have an opinion. All right,
yes, I have an opinion, and I'm going to keep it to myself.
I respect that. I respect that. But you obviously have thought about this, and you have thought about the media and how it handled the primary, the Democratic primary last time. I could see it in your eyes, and I respect the fact that you don't want to burn any bridges here. But there is, and you're in the Fox News channel now. You're in the no spin zone, and this channel was created because of the labyrinth that the media had set up that was largely liberal, and you were a beneficiary of it too, a little bit about against Bush the elder, and it still is there to this day. So generally speaking, why is the media more liberal than conservative?
Well, I don't know that it's always been that way. For example, in 1992, when I ran, I was hardly the beneficiary of it in the primary.
Not in the primary, but in the main,
you were. I was the flavor of the day.
Right.
And so, I think that a lot of it is there's an element, they always like what's new, and they always like a conflict, and they always like a story. But nothing I can say will contribute to anything good happening in America. And so I am not going to contribute to that.
All right. 3 more questions for you and I'll let you go. And I appreciate you coming in. Today, Vice President Biden said, actually it was printed today, but he told Newsweek magazine, the Taliban is not an enemy of the United States. And I went, what? And since you had to deal with the Taliban, training al-Qaeda before 9/11, you certainly know what the Taliban is all about. And I believe the Vice President is wrong. Am I wrong?
Well, I don't know that they trained them, but they certainly gave them safe haven.
No doubt.
And they would give them safe haven again if they were free to operate in Afghanistan,
Absolutely.
which is one of the reasons I've always supported our mission there. And so I think what he meant was that if the current government in Afghanistan thought they could reach an accommodation that we could all live with, he was leaving open the door on the theory that we can't stay in Afghanistan 100 years and we can't have enough soldiers there to dominate the landscape. But one of the things that I would be concerned about, and I always have been with the Taliban, is how miserable they made life for so many women and little girls.
Absolutely.
And that, I mean, just downright abusive things.
Evil. It's evil.
And
But they are an enemy to the United States.
They are an enemy of everything we believe in.
Absolutely.
And they tried to empower, when Mullah Omar was family married into Osama bin Laden's, it sort of cemented their shepherding of the al-Qaeda. And I think what the Vice President probably was saying is al-Qaeda was our affirmative enemy. They were trying to kill us in America. They were trying to kill us in Iraq and elsewhere, in Africa and lots of other places. And the Taliban itself had not conducted out-of-area operations against us. That's probably true. But that doesn't mean that I think we should not be really concerned if they were to govern Afghanistan.
Again, well, I do think they're an enemy to the United States. Now, Iran is the most difficult foreign situation right now because of the nuclear threat. And no politician seems to have a handle on that because China and Russia will not help in the sanctions against Iran. Yeah, we hurt them, but not enough for them to pull back. So the next president of the United States is going to have to deal with this nuclear thing. How would you deal with it?
Well, first of all, let me say there probably are lots of things that I don't know because I have declined to take any security briefing since Hillary became Secretary of State, unless someone in the White House specifically asked me to, like when I went to North Korea to bring those young journalists home. But here's what I think about it. I think that when the IAEA finally said Iran was trying to get a nuclear weapon and seemed to be pretty far along the road, that was the biggest unkept secret in the world. I mean, anybody who'd been paying attention knew that. We don't know maybe exactly when that would happen. But I also know that dealing with it is complicated. That's what the Israelis think too. I mean, when you ask yourself, what are your options here? I do not believe the president should take any military option off the table. And I think they should keep trying to find a way to work through this. There may be efforts right now that we don't even know about.
Sure,
it's
sure.
sabotage.
Why won't
which
Russia?
That may be up.
Why won't Russia and China help on this?
I'm surprised because partly it is to maintain a sense of neutrality that they're not totally in the American camp.
Yeah, but they know the danger to the world and commerce and everything else.
But it's dangerous for the Russians because of all the restive Muslims on their underbelly, many of whom have difficult living conditions and are fertile ground for
terrorism.
Yes, terrorism. And it's dangerous for the Chinese because of the Muslims in their northwest in the same kind of circumstances. But they probably want first claim on the oil. There are lots of things going on there. But the bottom line is, I think the Americans and the Israelis and the Sunni Arab states that are very concerned about it, I hope and presume they're all working together. I hope and presume they're sharing intelligence. And I hope and presume that they are looking at all their options.
That could be World War III right there, because Israel's not going to allow it to happen. They're going to go in, and you know what's going to happen after that.
But but there may be more than one way to skin a cat.
Maybe.
You know, they set them back pretty good. Whoever gummed up their computer capacity.
You know all that's going on. Absolutely.
You know it. And so I wouldn't, the only thing I'm saying is it may not become calamitous. And what a lot of the Americans and Israelis are worried about is if you try to bomb the facility, you still got to deal with the centrifuges. They're underground in an urban area.
Yeah. But if you take care of their structure, if you bomb them, you can basically knock out their infrastructure to deliver anything.
Yes, but most people, but I tell you what bothers me, just me as a citizen, knowing what I know about this. The Iranians, I think, would be crazy.
They are.
To ever launch a nuclear weapon because their whole society would disappear.
But they wouldn't launch it. They would give it off to somebody.
Yeah, well, so what they would do is but what I think would happen is if you have all this fissile material, then you give it to a terrorist group and they have a series of suitcase bombs and that could terrify and paralyze the world without creating a nuclear cloud over Jerusalem. And it's really a deeply troubling thing.
It is. Okay, final question. You and President Bush the Elder done a lot of humanitarian work, and then you and President Bush the Younger rallied people to give millions of dollars after the Haitian earthquake. I said on the air that you guys did a noble thing, but I didn't believe that that money was going to be used for anything other than day-to-day services, but nothing was going to improve in Haiti. And what I said was correct. If you go there now, it's just as bad now as it was before the earthquake. Poverty, corruption, chaos.
No,
Haiti.
wait.
Now, you're an expert on Haiti. You have a foundation in Haiti. I give a lot of money to Haiti, by the way, because I've been there and I feel so sorry for those children over there. There's something very wrong in Haiti. What is it?
Well, for one thing, ever since the first establishment of the Republic, look what happened in the beginning, 200-some years ago. Toussaint Louverture, the slave leader who overthrew the French Empire and established democracy, was lured to Switzerland into talks by France, and he disappeared. They either killed him or locked him up till he died. And for 200 years, Haiti's been either abused and neglected by its neighbors, and they've engaged in self-abuse and self-neglect. But I have seen a change. This last time that I was there, and I've been working there. I go there every month, you know, and
I know.
And the money President Bush and I raised, we have set up to invest in businesses, and we raised $20 million more through Carlos Slim and a Canadian philanthropist named Frank Justra to set up a small business loan fund because the banks down there don't loan money to small business. And so we are seeing structural reforms. The last time I was there, it marked 4 months that the streets have been the cleanest I've been in the 35 years I've been going there. We have thousands of people moving out of the camps. We have tens of thousands more kids in school. There's a new industrial park in the north that the United States spearheaded with a lot of help from others that is now open for business. The Korean company is going to build the first textile mill the country's ever had and hire 20,000 people to make clothes. A young American is going to set up a furniture factory there with 3,000 jobs. And the new prime minister of Haiti, working for the president, is a Haitian national who was a career UN employee, who's a doctor, and he's straight as a string, and he's as good as gold. And the president has one great attribute. He will make a decision. In the past, Haiti has been bogged down, as you pointed out, by corruption, but also by incapacity and by the economic interests that have controlled the country for so long, preferring 100% of a tiny economic pie to a smaller percentage of a great big economic pie. That's all beginning to change. We still got a chance to do something. And the biggest cell phone provider down there, Dennis O'Brien, Digicel, has headed an action group for me through the Global Initiative. We've raised almost $300 million down there in new commitments for business investments. It's going to create thousands of jobs. So I think the main thing we got to do is keep building the capacity of the government, insist on transparency so we know if people are cheating, and create more jobs in the private sector.
So you're optimistic about it?
I'm more optimistic than I've ever been, and it's getting there. And the arts and crafts sector is the one sector of the economy that's already stronger than it was before the earthquake.
Okay. Mr. President, we appreciate you coming in. The book is Back to Work, and I hope you come back. You know, it took you a long time to come in here.
Look, this mortgage thing is ready-made for you. You need to look. You really need to figure out what do you think is a good conservative resolution of this.
I'm not a conservative. I'm independent. But we will look. Look. You know us. We watch everybody.
But if you look at this whole thing for 200 years since buildings have been widely owned, when you have a financial collapse and a mortgage collapse,
you can build from that.
Yes, but it takes 10 years to get over unless you clean up the mortgage mess quicker. And so you don't have to agree with what I said in my book, but we could put this country back to work if we get working on it.
I believe that, and that's why you wrote the book. And you should suggest to President Obama that he appoint me Secretary of Housing if he's reelected.
Are you willing to serve?
Absolutely.
I will tell him tonight. I will call him tonight. That's probably
Merry
the best
Christmas.
idea he's had.
Yeah, I know. He'll be really excited to hear that. Merry Christmas, Mr.
Thank you.
President. Pleasure to see you.
Merry Christmas, Bill.